Welcome back. It's been a while. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to update the channel in a bit because I switched employment. I left my old job and started a new job, so this kind of fell on the back burner. Those jobs are important though. What is important is I bought more gear. I recently picked up a Nikon 35mm f2.8 for my Nikon F2. Ever since I bought the Nikon F2 last summer, it's quickly become my favorite camera. And I've mostly been shooting on the 50mm 1.4 since I bought the camera, but I felt like it was time for a change. Time to pick up a 35mm. So we know what new lens I bought from the Nikon. What film did I shoot? I decided to try a new film stock out as well. New lens, new film. I decided to pick up a roll of ORWO's NC500, a brand new color negative film. With the gear explained, I ran off to Mount Rainier, but not before stopping at Elba, a small little city outside the park. Alba's a stop along the way to Mount Rainier that if you blink you can miss it. The neat thing is they do have abandoned train cars there that they've turned into both a diner and a bed and breakfast, so it's kind of a cute little area to stop off at and take a look. I felt this was the perfect place to start our trip and just kind of get warmed up, take a couple photos, and kind of just get into the mode of shooting for the day. Also, you can tell here at this last little bit of footage, I have a different camera for recording now. I recently picked up a Digicam as well. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it. I'm still kind of learning how to work with this camera. It's very unique. I'm not really loving the still images I'm getting out of this camera, but I am enjoying the videos it's producing. I think there's something kind of neat and just kind of different about it. I'm excited to play with this. I think I'm going to probably be doing a little bit more with this camera over the summer and kind of making some different little B-roll shots with it. I think there's something to it. But at this point, I'm just going to leave it at that and maybe get into it later on in a different video. As for the lens, I'm loving it. It's nice and sharp and it's giving me a great focal point. I'm really enjoying it. The only thing I'm seeing though is it's got a tendency to kind of flare and wash out the photo, so maybe a lens hood might be good for this lens on a bright summer's day. As for the film, I'm loving it. ORWO's NC500 is kind of giving me some Kodak Color Plus vibes. It's desaturated, it's grainy, but it's also got this very classic vintage look. It's everything I could ask for in a film. Personally, I'm really excited to shoot this film this summer because I think I could make some really nice work with it, and it could really capture an essence of just basically like nostalgia and like almost like the family road trips I used to take as a kid. Like that's all I ever really wanted to capture in my photos. At this point though, I was kind of done with Elba. We kind of marched around town and saw what we needed to see, and we made our way off to Rainier National Park.
America, the beautiful.
No. Once at the gate, it took us about 20 minutes to get in the park. It had been the first sunny day in months up here in the Pacific Northwest, so I think everybody had the same idea as we did. It was, let's go to the mountain, let's go outdoors, let's get some sunlight. Unfortunately, once getting into the park, we found out that half the park was closed, if not more. Mount Rainier National Park usually has most of the park closed during winter just because it's pretty hard to plow the roads on the backside of the mountain. But even today, we couldn't get past Longmire, and Longmire's pretty early up in the park. I think it's only about 10 miles in, so there wasn't much of the park open for us to see that day. But I was still determined to take some good photos and just enjoy the outdoors. Once parked, we headed to the backside of Longmire. I actually haven't explored this area too much. You kind of have to go through like the park ranger housing and like basically where they hold all their equipment and stuff like that, but there's a little trail back here that leads to a bridge, and I think this is the perfect start for the day. Just basically check this place out since I had never seen it before. So I was feeling inspired at this point. This bridge was a pretty nice composition, and I actually had been planning on shooting a second camera I brought with me, but for a specific intention. I had brought my Canon EOS 30 with me, a camera I've had for a while now, and it's one of my favorites. It's just basically a Canon EF mount camera, and it has all the bells and whistles in it. It's just basically a really nice camera to have on hand when feeling lazy, and I've been feeling pretty lazy. The main intention of bringing this camera was to have it help out with my trichrome photography. If you watch some of my past videos, you know that I like doing trichrome photos. I think it's a really interesting way to shoot color photos on black and white film. I really like doing this with infrared film because I do love the color infrared look. Unfortunately, I don't have the money to buy Kodak area chrome or even the chance of finding it, to be honest. As well as the chances of shooting expired film at an exorbitant price is not my favorite gamble to take. So taking the time to make a brand new color infrared photo with filters and black and white film is more so my style. Usually when I do the color infrared photos, I've been using my Olympus OM1 or my Mamiya C2 because they're mechanical cameras. I can take them out anywhere and they're pretty hardy. I don't need a battery to operate them, and I've used a handheld Sekonic meter to help meter each scene, and have basically used a couple different phone apps and just basically pen and paper to help me do the conversions on my filter factors as well as reciprocity. To say the least, that's a lot of moving parts when you're taking photos out in the field, and it really slows you down, and it can kind of make doing these photos not enjoyable. However though, a few months ago I was playing around with my Canon EOS 30 and I realized my filters fit on my 40mm pancake lens. So I was just wondering to see if the Canon could meter through my Hoya R72 filter, and surprisingly it could. Once I figured this out, my mind started turning and I thought that I could probably set the camera to aperture priority mode and just let the camera do most of the work. This way I don't really have to struggle too much. I can just basically set the aperture where I want it, usually f11 or f16, and then take some photos and let the camera do all the math for shutter speeds and that. This idea was very young and I actually haven't tried it out, so I was actually pretty excited to start shooting. So I set up the tripod, set up the Canon, and just started taking filters on and off the camera, taking my photos. So if you're unfamiliar with my process of how I take infrared photos, I usually start with the infrared filter, move on to the red filter, then the green filter, then the blue filter. And lately in post-production, I've been taking these into Photoshop and I've been merging the channels of the infrared filter, the green filter, and the blue filter, as well as the infrared filter, the red filter, and the blue filter to get two different looks of infrared trichrome photography. I've been shooting trichrome photography for over a year, and I really haven't found anything that's my style yet. I still believe I'm in the learning phases, and I haven't really got anything I think is really super portfolio worthy, but it's been a fun journey nonetheless. After a couple infrared shots, I decided to move back to the Nikon F2 and shoot some more ORWO. I asked Claire to pose for me so I could take some portrait photos of her to really see how the NC500 does with skin tones and just what it's like as a portrait film stock. So these two images here, the one on the left is the unedited version, and the one on the right is the edited version. The main difference on the one on the right is I've just added warmth. The one on the left is just basically a converted image through Negative Lab Pro on Lightroom with just an increasement of sharpness. Honestly, with all my photos, I ended up actually adding in more warmth on this video because I felt like it was pretty desaturated and pretty cool, and that was not the look I was going for. So just take that in mind when you're looking at this film stock, and if you decide to get it, know that it is a little more desaturated and a little more cool, and yeah, I did add a lot of warmth into them. And after the portraits, it was just kind of shooting willy-nilly. I took some photos on the F2 and I took some trichrome photos on the Canon EOS 30. After a bit of shooting though, I could see that the light was dwindling, especially with the tree coverage up on Mount Rainier. I knew I wasn't going to have as much light as I actually wanted, so we started making our way back to the car. With the ORWO film finished up, I moved back to the trichrome photography. The Canon did a great job with the aperture priority. It really sped up my workflow while shooting trichrome photos. I did have a couple issues though. The 40mm pancake lens I was using for the photos, its focus ring is right where you attach the filters. It's right on the very end of the lens, so you can end up bumping that. So if you're trying to manually focus with this camera, you can end up losing focus when you're taking on and off filters. Another issue I was having was with the reflective light of the snow, as well as the ever-changing light in the sky. It seems that when I was doing my exposures that the light was changing so fast at that point that basically my exposures weren't coming out even. It was a little disheartening to have these photos not be perfect, which I thought they'd be, but that's half the fun of film photography. The main thing though I can't complain about is that I got perfectly exposed images for each individual scene, but when it came to basically combining the scenes together in post, the exposures were a little bit off per scene. So I'm not too sure what happened there, and it might have been just basically a different highlight spot coming in and out, which made the camera slow down. Also at this point, the light was pretty much wrapping up for the day, and I had screwed up a couple photos on this roll, so I only had a few shots left and not enough to make a trichrome, so I decided to just take some infrared shots on the SFX 200 that I had packed. And with those photos out of the way, I packed up into the car and we left the park. Again, sorry for the hiatus there, it was unintentional, but with life, sometimes things happen. And unfortunately, it's going to be another wait till you get the next episode as well. But don't worry, there are more episodes coming. I have about 4 in the pipeline, and I'm just kind of waiting on the film to get back from the lab so I can start scanning and getting these done. Hopefully they'll be posted sooner than later, and that you'll be enjoying them with me as well. Until then though, feel free to leave a comment or ask me a couple questions about trichrome photography or NC500 or the new Nikon 35mm lens I got, or make a recommendation of a video you'd like to see in the future. I have a few ideas for more videos coming up this summer and stuff like that, so I'm trying to keep this channel live and active. But until then, I'll see you soon. I might actually stop here and go do the next round. Let's do that.